discount, I guess, because he's buying a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's a good time of the year too.
Yeah.
Like right now, which I never thought about, but okay. Here we go.
So
Ready?
the first one was about your parents, and then I guess I specifically, we hadn't really talked about what Tyra was like, but I got my name from him, so I guess.
Okay. My dad was very tall and very thin, and he could take his foot and put it around his head.
He's flexible too.
He was very flexible. He was a tease, and he liked to pick at people. And if you disobeyed, you got this look that was, you didn't want Daddy to look at you that way. When he went courting Mother, he rode the horse. And when the date at her parents' home was on, he would get back on the horse and fall asleep, and the horse knew the way home. So
Oh.
that's how he got home.
Wow.
Did they both live in the same place?
Um,
Like when they met?
in the same town.
Mm-hmm.
Story has it he dated Aunt Gladys first,
Okay.
and then dated Mother. Daddy's brother was probably 20 years older than he was.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
And when Uncle Claude's kids came to Daddy and said, "Tell us about Dad when he was a kid," Daddy said, "I wasn't born."
Oh yeah.
So he had his own shop, is that right?
When he and Mother got married, Daddy worked at a sawmill. And what were some of the other things he did?
Let me add this. When he built his home, the one that you, wait a minute,
We haven't been there,
you've never seen it.
but we've seen pictures.
Yeah. He built that out of oak, and you'd walk in that house, you wouldn't hear a creak.
Yeah,
Now, this isn't professional
right.
builders,
Yeah.
but they built as like a rock, that entire house.
It was professional people that built the house. He didn't build it. He cut the trees and took them to the sawmill.
Okay, I stand corrected.
He worked at a sawmill when they first got married.
I like my version better.
No, that's the one. Yeah, when it evolves down the line, and then he built it all in one day, probably. 20 years from now.
And his other jobs were, I'll say, sharecropping. He lived in a house on Uncle Claude's farm, and Dad worked with them. And then from there, the next year, he did that kind of work for Uncle Glenn. And when he got tired of doing that, he went to Winston-Salem, which was 35 miles away,
Yeah, about that.
and got a job driving a fuel oil truck.
Okay.
And after several years, the man that owned that business wanted to get out of it. So he sold Daddy a portion of it.
Gotcha.
And Daddy's business was in East Bend, and the truck sat across the road. And when Mother was 60, I think, Daddy's secretary retired, and Mother went to work for him.
So she worked for her husband. She was the secretary.
And she told me, and he does make mistakes once in a while.
So you moved to
What?
East Bend in Winston-Salem? Are those?
You lived in East Bend the whole time?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, you missed a point. Tyra's net worth at the time Pat was born was 25 cents.
Really?
Had a quarter in his pocket.
Wow.
I was born in March. and there was no more money that came in until the fall when the tobacco
Oh yeah.
crop was harvested.
Wow.
Mother wanted to give some money to the midwife who delivered me, and there was none to give. She used that money to buy pins for my diapers.
Wow. That's crazy.
And then, so we met your mom, but we never got to meet your dad. But we've heard a lot about him, I guess. And then he did the paintings.
They did the
Right.
paintings, yeah.
So what was he like?
He was a strong hand, you might say, a disciplinarian, but he didn't get on me much.
Yeah.
You know, even though I did some things wrong, he would be more quiet, and you'd get the look, and he'd be on his way, and you knew you'd had
Were they
upset
similar?
him. But yeah, what were you interested in his
Yeah.
growing up and that sort of thing?
Yeah, and then like, I don't know what. I mean, he was interested in painting.
Oh
and then-
yeah, well, yeah, he came through school. I guess he got out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
He eventually went to 7 years of night school
Okay.
in New York while he was working for Western Electric.
Okay.
But to go back to when he was younger, I have a picture of him in there on a tricycle, and in those days, tricycles had no tires, just steel rim.
Yeah.
And he was, you know, the coat that he wore and all, and he was at an apartment. You can see the apartment behind him. He was sitting on his bike. And that's if you don't have that picture, you've got to get a copy of that, because that was him in his early day. But he was not a,
His first job was
well, I think his first job was in a fruit company, stacking fruit, boxing fruit and things. And as I recall, his dad used to have a horse. I don't know if he owned it, but a horse and a wagon, and there was fruit in it, and he would go down the street
Yeah.
trying to sell fruit to people. And the way they grew up in Philly, all the money that anybody earned in the family, I don't know that the sisters ever earned any, but I don't know what they would have done. But all the money went to my dad's parents
Okay.
to feed the family.
Yeah.
So what everyone made, it all went together.
any money that the children made, they
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they pulled it. And then after mom and dad got married, they were supporting his mother and father until he died. And then his mother had no place to live. So she would spend 3 months with one sister, one of my dad's sisters, and 3 months with the other one, and come down to North Carolina and spend 6 months with us.
Yeah.
And that was a good experience.
So did they meet in Philadelphia, your parents?
They didn't meet, well, not in Philadelphia. I guess it would have been there. There was a Western Electric company there.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly what they did, but mom was one of the gals that was
Okay.
in her group.
Okay.
And dad worked there also. And he took artwork too. And he was a good artist.
Yep.
And he did that figurine right there.
sculpture.
Yeah.
That sculpture, yeah.
That's crazy.
And he won an award in his class. Now, what year it was or anything, I don't know how that went. But he won an award, and in talking with the instructor, he said, you know, your chances of making a living as a cartoonist or anything like that is just about nil.
Right.
He said, you'd be better off to go find other kinds of work. And that's when he got into Western Electric and
But
got
he
into
always
the
en-
engineering department.
He always kind of enjoyed that though. Like he kept doing it. That
The
was
art?
his hobby.
He kept doing artwork for just a hobby, yeah. And once he retired, he spent a lot of hours on the boards,
Is
painting.
that were most of those probably from after he retired then? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he instead of going to a site and painting it, he'd have a picture of it out of a magazine, and he'd pin it up there on his
Okay.
board, and then he'd begin to develop something from that.
Let's see what else.
But we had he bought a place in Florida. You might be interested in this. He bought a place in Florida at Ponta Gorda.
Okay.
And Pat and I got married, and we moved to Ohio. And he said to my mom, they're never going to come down. We'd hardly ever see them.
Uh-huh.
So he sold it. And this was to be, as it was developed, a waterway with a dock for a boat, and then your home and a garage, and you take off in your car and on land go wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a real nice place. And he sold that before they started developing it because he just knew we wouldn't get down there that much.
Right.
But
So where did they live then after you moved to Ohio?
They lived in a
Well, they were-
place called Clemens.
yeah,
They were not far from my mother and dad.
Oh, so they were they stayed in North Carolina.
Well, they initially, like when I went to college, he was in Greensboro. That mom and dad lived in Greensboro, and then they got a place at a lake, and he was the contractor that hired the guys to raise the roof of this block house. I think it was 2 blocks, and then extend it on out so that you would sit at this big glass window and look out at the lake while you ate, and all that. Really nice place.
Yeah.
That would have been fun to keep. We got some pictures that you could see of that. And then after we moved to Ohio, he said, well, we're not going to see that much of them, so they sold the lake place.
Gotcha.
Lived in Winston-Salem on
In Clemens.
Highway 67. Well, yeah, they had a home
In Clemens.
in Clemens, for a while. They built that one, or hired the contractor to build it.
My parents and Dick's parents, as far as their upbringing, you couldn't have had 2 couples any different.
Yeah.
You got city folks and you got poor country folks.
Yeah.
Anytime that we were at my mother's, mother and daddy invited them to come. Anytime we were at
In
theirs,
Greensboro.
it was reversed. There were times we would call down there and the 4 of them would be together playing cards.
Really? They hung out?
They did.
They hit it off pretty good, yeah. Which kind of would surprise me,
Yeah.
because he was a Philadelphia city slicker,
Right. Yeah.
And of course, now when I was born, he had a home that they built just about the Depression time in Nutley, New Jersey. In those days, your address would have been 44 Shepherd Place, Nutley, 10, New Jersey. And the 10 later became a part of the zip codes,
Okay. Yeah.
more elaborate. But he had a nice home there. And then the company wanted to send him on to North Carolina to work, so that's how he ended up going down there.
We were born at the end of the Depression. I was 10 when Kent was born, 12 when Thomas was born. And I asked Dick's mother, I said, why did you only have 1 child? And she said, I was lucky to have 1 because of the Depression. They were taking care of both of the sets of parents.
yeah.
And
Yeah, they took care of both of their parents
when
quite a while.
my dad died, the neighbor down the road came up and stopped and he said, now, Patricia, do not feel that your parents were stingy when you go through the house and find things. He said, when people lived through the Depression, they didn't throw anything away. They kept everything. And he was right. They had. But I think about how hard my parents worked.
Mm-hmm.
We had it a whole lot easier than they did.
Yeah. And now we.
Yeah. Not kidding.
What about, so how did you guys end up so you guys both met in North Carolina?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I'll start in on it. I was working at Western Electric, hadn't been out of school long, and by that time I was changing oil in the car and things like that. And my dad never worked on a car, but I was changing oil and spark plugs, and that was pretty good for those days. There wasn't much else to the car, and let's see.
So both your families were in North Carolina when
Yeah.
you met?
Wait, so were you in college when you met? Or was before that?
No.
No, Granddad had graduated.
Oh, it was okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So it was after North Carolina.
Yeah, so I had got I lost my train of thought there. Not hard to do anymore. But I was working at Western Electric, had just gotten out of college,
Okay.
and I was an engineer at that point. And I couldn't really change my oil because I was living in an apartment. And it's pretty messy to do that around an apartment. So I just stopped into the local gas station. And after having been in there 2 or 3 times, the last time I was there, he said, "You know, I've got a niece that you ought to meet." And he said, here's her name and telephone number. And I said, okay. So I put that in my wallet. And I walked out of there that day and never thought another thing about it. It had completely left my mind.
Who was it? Uncle?
And
Uncle Phil.
and Uncle Phil had the garage. So later I was dating, and I came home one night and I said, I don't think I like that gal that much. God, who in the world am I gonna? I was just sitting down in front of the television with a sandwich I had just made, and I'm thinking, well, who am I gonna date now? And just like that, I knew that I had that in my wallet, and I hadn't thought about it since the day I put it in there, which led me to believe something. But so anyway, I pulled it out and gave Pat a call, and
Now, Uncle Phil went home and told Aunt Maxie that he had given my number out to Dick, and she read him the riot act. How dare you give my niece's telephone number out to strange boys? And
Wait, so Uncle Phil was your dad's brother or your mom's brother?
Aunt Maxie was my mother's sister.
Oh, okay.
Uncle Phil's her husband.
Okay.
And like he said, for several months, didn't hear anything. So I'd come home from work and was taking a nap when the phone rang, and it was himself. And he said, would you like to go get a cup of coffee? So I said, yes, I would do that. So we went to a place called Staley's. It was a drive-in restaurant.
and they served out in the parking lot. They come out with trays with food and drink.
Did you know he was going to call? Like, did you know someone had given your number?
Yeah, I knew
It had been a while.
it had been a long while.
Oh.
So he invited me for coffee, and we went there, and I didn't like coffee, but I was invited for coffee, so I ordered coffee. He ordered a beer. I had never in my life been with anybody that was drinking beer. Scared me to death. I thought, if I ever get out of here. Anyway, he acted reasonably well, and I accepted another date and a few more after that, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
We also lived in the same apartment complex.
Oh, you
really?
did?
Yeah, it turned out we were
You had no idea.
no
So when
idea.
you called her, you were calling her in the same
I could have hit a baseball and popped it right on top of her apartment. That's how close she was.
That's
That's
amazing.
funny. He said, "Where should I pick you up?" Oh, here? That's funny.
I'll tell you a little story going back about that beer. I did have beer occasionally during my college years. And while I was in college, seems I went out with somebody, and Mom and Dad were living in Greensboro now, so when I came home, I was in Greensboro. This is all before I met Pat. And we went over to one of the girls' school, and I don't know why, if the guy driving had a girlfriend there or what it was. And I wasn't dating anybody, and I'm sitting in the back seat, and I finished my beer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we didn't want anyone to see me drinking beer.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't want anybody to see the beer can. This was a nice small college in Greensboro.
Mm-hmm.
But just like I would have done at a drive-in restaurant, I unwind the window and tossed the can out. And that can hit that parking lot. Whang, whang, whang.
Was everyone like...
Yeah.
Everybody says, I didn't do that.
So, what was work for you at the time you met?
Well, when I graduated from high school, I went to Appalachian for 2 years, and that summer I got a job working for the telephone company and decided not to go back to college. So I was a long distance telephone operator and did that till we moved to Columbus.
Okay.
How much was college then? Do you remember?
Oh, I've got a book in there that's still
That's
tells me.
crazy.
And that was a teacher's college at the time, right?
It was Appalachian State Teachers College, yeah.
Did you like it there?
Yeah, it was very different than high school.
Mm-hmm.
It was also very strict in that we were in the mountains and girls were not allowed to wear slacks on campus. And when it snowed and the wind blowed, sometimes you would have blood running down your legs where the ice had hit
gosh.
your...
You had to wear a skirt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in those days, a man teacher would come to a PTA meeting. His wife always came with him. The men always wore shirts and ties and jackets, and very different than it is now.
Yeah.
And then after you were in Columbus,
Mm-hmm.
did you have a job right away when you moved here?
No, I was pregnant when we came here with Eric, and I was a stay-at-home mom until your dad was in the 6th grade, and determined at that time that we had 2 boys to put through college, and felt that I should get a part-time job and save that money for college, which is what we did.
That's when you got a job at the eye doctor?
At Dr. Pixel's.
That's crazy. So you worked there for a long time.
I did. And then when Eric, we had put money away for him, and he decided to go into the Navy. And when your dad went to college, the deal was Grandad would pay a third, I would pay a third, and your dad would pay a third. And that's pretty much what we did.
So did Eric, did he use that, his money, or no?
It was given to him, and he bought a car with the portion that had gone into...
I think, no, that was, remember before he went in the Navy, he bought a CD.
You're right, and it was 13% interest.
Yeah, I bought a CD for quite an extended period of time.
Yeah.
That
You're right.
they're what, like 2%?
Yeah, back then there were a lot more.
So he just put it in a CD and let it while he was gone?
Just let it regenerate.
That's smart. Before he left.
Yep.
And our first house was down in the Groveport school system. And there came a time that there was not enough money to raise the schools, and the levies were not passing, and they just closed the school. I did homeschooling for Eric and your dad.
Wait, there was no option to even go
No.
to a school.
No. The buses didn't run, the schools were closed.
So was it like a strike or like a permanent thing?
Yeah,
It was permanent until
until the first of the year started,
Wow.
and then they got the money
Wow.
to operate.
That's
How long
crazy.
was that then?
Yeah,
A few months?
a couple months, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How'd you know what to teach him?
And when
Well,
they
she went to teachers college.
Yeah, but yeah.
Like what they're
Like
well,
what
you
they're
meant, like,
learning
what
right
unit
now.
they're on.
Yeah.
Well, there was Mr. Rogers, and there was Sesame Street.
Yeah.
Were they young when that happened?
Eric was in the 6th grade. Your dad was in the 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
There was a company here in Columbus that did books for schools,
Mm-hmm.
and my girlfriend and I went there, and we bought workbooks for math and English and something else,
Well, that's
science
good.
maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And we had school every day. We would do the workbooks and read, and
Jeez.
they had to watch Sesame Street or whatever educational program there was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
and it pays to keep the condition of your house at its best. That fall, I had started painting the front. I think I painted the whole thing. I used to paint the front one year, and or
yeah.
something. It was done in segments, and I had just freshly painted the front. Although all 4 sides looked great. And when it came up that we were going to move to Worthington, the house was ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go out on the pole, a telephone pole out on, what road is it? Winchester Pike, that said, vote for so-and-so, for the levy.
Uh-huh.
And I reached over and I got that off of there, and I came back and I nailed it to a piece of plywood. And then I bought a for sale sign
Uh-huh.
that went diagonally across that. And I went out and hammered that in the dirt. And so everybody knew that
Yeah.
we were out of there and the funny thing is, we knew about Worthington schools,
Good.
and you knew about various places. And that Sunday, I said, Pat, I'm going up to Worthington. And you didn't go that first day, did you?
No, you didn't tell me where you were going even. You
Yeah,
just went.
okay. I was going, and I went right straight up to Worthington, and I'm riding around, and I'm seeing police cars. I said,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they have police in Worthington, and there's a car. Every once in a while, you'd see the police. Never saw that down our way.
Yeah.
You never saw a snowplow except one time all winter on the road we were on. Otherwise, you just rode over the top of the snow.
Yeah.
And Worthington looked every bit as nice as I began to remember some of the things I had heard about it. Education was a big thing in Worthington. So we put her up for sale, like I say, and it wasn't too long, but reasonably, a few weeks or something. A young couple bought it.
And then somebody stole the sign in front of our house that said sold.
So you kept getting calls?
But it was too late.
Yeah. Right.
And we could not, the people who wanted our house could not buy it for a while. So we had
Oh,
to
okay.
stay where we were. And I had gone to a PTA meeting, and a man up the street had come over and said, oh, Pat, don't worry. He said, this is going to be over and done with. Everything's going to be fine. And I said, I'm sure you're right. And the next morning, the moving van pulled into our driveway.
And none of the neighbors knew we actually were going.
Wow. Oh, okay. Yeah.
When that sign disappeared, they thought, well, I guess
They'd
they
given up.
given up. But
Um,
we had gotten lucky, and
well, what's crazy to me is I think like that trend hasn't changed. I still like Grove, all the south side suburbs of Columbus. I think that they're still kind of like that because the north side suburbs have all just kept growing,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
which
yeah.
it's kind of weird.
This is the end of the end of the area to live in. You know,
Right.
the outside surface to live in.
Groveport's levy passed this time,
Yeah.
which amazed me.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of Catholics in our neighborhood, and they had to pay Catholic school prices.
Oh, they went to private school. Oh, that is.
Yeah.
That
that's
was a big part of
thing
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big part.
And I wasn't mad at them for
Right.
voting against it, but let me out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want people invested in the schools.
And and we felt that we could not really afford to live in Worthington, but we were willing to sacrifice everything we had to get your parents a good
Mhm.
Yeah.
education. A neighbor came up that Christmas and said, "We are going to do a luminarian, and would you like to participate?"
That was said to us when we were living in Worthington,
Yeah.
after we had just moved.
So I said, "Well, what is a luminarian?" And she explained to me that they do bags with candles in it and they light it on Christmas Eve. And I said, "How much does it cost?" And she said, $4. And I said, "Gee, that is an awful lot of money, and we're not even going to be here." She said, "Well, she would light it." And she said, "You can't afford $4? And I said, "Well, I need 10 candles. That's 40. And she said, No. It's $4 for the whole thing."
Yeah.
But I was just so convinced that everything in Worthington
Was
was
expensive.
out of our reach.
Yeah, that's funny.
And we wish we had done it sooner.
Yeah.
And
Kind of like a perception thing, you know?
we would not have moved out of Worthington until you two were in a position where you did not need schooling anymore. Because if anything happened to your mother and dad, you would have come to us.
We've been able to go there.
Yeah. And then as you got older, it was, no, you would stay in your house and we'd come live in your house and you'd stay in Gahanna.
We did like it there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you got a good education there.
I think so. Yep.
Yeah.
So, so to kind of circling back, so I was going to ask you if you remembered making your decision to go to NC State, and if it was hard, or if that was just kind of like where you thought you'd go.
You love this.
Yeah.
You love it. I'm at the swimming pool. We lived in Winston back then.
Uh-huh.
Now I was just a little kid in grammar school.
Yeah.
And I was at the swim. I spent a lot of time there, running, playing, local boys, you know, and we used to have a good time. And I was in a discussion with somebody. Well, I can't, with no more education than I had, you didn't get much of a discussion. But the question came up, and he said, "Where are you going to high school?" I said, "NC State." That's a fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew then.
You just knew, yeah.
For some reason, I had heard, I guess, just enough about it.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about me being, now pretty young. I was pretty young. So, but that was, yeah, I kind of knew NC State right from the start. And we never drove down to visit it. We could have if Dad wanted to.
Right.
But
It's not too far. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't necessarily want to do that, I guess. And when he drove me down, and Mom drove me down to start unloading my clothes and all in Tucker dorm, Dad was looking around and he sees car hoods up, kids laying across the radiator, you know, or the fender, changing spark plugs and all this, and he said, "Boy, this is a good sign." And you know, it was a mechanical school, yeah, engineering.
Do you want coffee?
No, I'm okay.
They had many types of engineering, with mechanical being one of them. And so anyway, that was
So
a good deal.
Were you the first to go to college? Your dad didn't?
He went to night school, was all.
Night school,
Yeah,
yeah.
he didn't go to college, and he didn't live too far, I don't believe, from Temple University,
Yeah, it's in Philly.
right in Philly.
Yeah.
And I think there's a main road that goes north, and it's located around that. And he was a little further north than that.
Were you the first to go to school?
Yeah. And I don't know that I have this completely correct. I believe when Mother was in school, the 11th grade was as far as it went.
Okay.
When she was due to be in 11th grade, she was the only person in the class. They talked her into repeating the 10th grade, and she never finished.
Wow.
But
That's not fair.
I agree.
Yeah.
And one year we were,
So it's a really small school then. Did she grow up in East Bend?
Mhm.
Okay.
one year, Tyra Hobson wanted to raise a crop, a tobacco crop, so that he could put Thomas through 4 years of school on it, which I think is what happened. Pretty much, because he only had tobacco 1 year, right?
I don't know, but
But anyway, they had the tobacco, and Thomas and Kent were out priming. That means cutting off or whatever they do, the lower branches that had cured, were partially cured, and were ready to go into the heated barn. And those two boys came in, and their hands were black from working with, when you're working with the tobacco and cutting it and the sap and all that. And boy, they were two dirty people. But he had that one crop. I think it was just one crop.
I know Thomas worked 3 jobs when he was in school. He delivered newspapers. That was first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
and I don't remember what the other 2 were.
Where did he go to school? Did he play football?
He did in high school.
Okay.
Thomas graduated from North Carolina State.
So he went to NC State too. Okay.
And I really think Dick was instrumental in his choice.
Now you know how big Thomas is.
Uh-huh.
He was on a high school football team,
Uh-huh.
and he was at one end of the line, and at the other end of the line was a fella called Tater. And I guess his quarterback early in the game,
He was a very good quarterback.
very good quarterback. He came up through the middle, and he got caught between those two.
Yeah.
He said it's the last he played that night.
Oh gosh.
Thomas and Tater kind of took him out.
We never saw him play, but I can imagine. That was the county schools in North Carolina were 7-man football.
Okay. Yeah.
And then where I went, R.J. Reynolds was 11-man.
Yeah.
So the end of one of the years, they were going to have the county work up a team to play R.J. Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
Why, you better believe that Reynolds, with their 11-man
Right.
experience, are going to beat the socks off these
Yeah.
country boys.
Yeah.
He didn't do it.
Yeah. They won?
Yeah, the country boys
Yeah.
won. They worked up the 11-man team and came and
Huh.
Country folks will survive.
Yeah.
yeah. It was one of those interesting moments.
So did you start running while you were in high school, or
No,
was it before?
now no, wait a minute. What did I say? Oh yeah, I did. I started running in high school. I was in the band,
Yeah.
and I finally figured out I'm never going to learn to play this thing.
This clarinet.
So yeah, and it never sounded good and all that stuff. So I went through the 10th grade in the band, and then I decided, well, I went out for baseball at 10th grade. I played on a team. It was a junior varsity, center field, never dropped a fly the whole time. For some reason, my radar was super.
Yeah.
I didn't have an arm to throw it in with, so I had to
You run it in. You run it in.
But at junior year, I went out. No, it was senior year. I think it was a senior year. I went out for track. And another guy and I made a deal, said, well, this is our first 440 race. 440 yards. It's been shortened slightly to 400 meters.
Yeah.
But we kind of made a pact that we were going to go around that track and we'll come in together. We're not going to, you don't want to beat your friends, you know. When I rounded that fourth turn, everything that was ever thought of was gone. And I took off like a bat out of the, coming out of the barn as hard as I could run. And from that point on, I was running the 440 yard dash.
Yeah. So, did you have any contact with NC State to run there before?
No.
Or you just got to campus and then?
Just got to campus, and I had believed that I would run. I didn't know what was going to happen. And the Tucker dorm was going to have track meet against Owen and a couple other dorms. Inter-dormitory track meet type thing. And there was a fellow from Pittsburgh that was also in my dorm. And he was a 440 runner. Well, I beat him, always. But he was close enough behind that there weren't too many people could beat him. So we just swept that dorm thing, and then I went out for the long distance run. What is it? Cross country. Yeah. And going beyond 440 was not good.
No.
I didn't enjoy it. You know, it's too much time to.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed walking off from people when I was running.
Did North Carolina State have a tryout then that you went to?
No, I was on the team automatically.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Okay, so you like talked to the coach or something like that?
Yeah,
Or
I showed up
at
wherever.
practice?
I
Yeah.
showed up at practice wherever, whatever it was, and
Gotcha.
he said, "What do you run?" I said, "I don't know." It's about what it was.
Yeah.
And so I was running 220 also. Not every race, depends on how many runners the other teams had, but we ran, you know, the Duke, Carolina, NC State, Wake Forest, but we also ran Maryland was involved in it, and some of the other ACC teams.
Virginia.
Virginia, yeah. We ran a big indoor meet up in Virginia during the winter months. But I don't know if I think I might have told you this story, but the first time I ran against Carolina, they had 3 runners, and it was me.
No one, NC State didn't have any else.
No,
Yeah, it's just you.
yeah, Tom Stradley, the other one he ended up running a number of those races, but he was going to run 220 and something else. Well, we ran the 220 out of the chute, and you made your first curve. Well, it was kind of a long curve, and then in front of the bleachers, you did the last and ended up the 440 kind of at the end of the bleachers. And it was all marked very well. So here I am coming out of the chute, and I come up that long 220 stretch. And there were 3 Carolina runners. One of them gets in front of me, another one gets behind me, another one beside me, and another one gets behind me.
Yeah.
So I was boxed in, and I thought to myself, I bet that's what somebody called boxed in. And I could not get out of that. So a few weeks later, we were back to Carolina to run, and I decided I'm coming out of that 220, and I'm going to run the 220-yard dash full out and see what happens. Do I have the strength to keep going?
Right.
And when I crossed the 220, there was a coach there from Carolina that clocked me. And he later told my coach that my speed as a freshman in college at that point was faster than the winning speed a couple days before at Carolina for 220 for high school.
Okay, you won the 220 race in a 440.
Yeah. And I never saw the guys again the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that was,
So 440's once around?
Now it would be. Right.
Once
What
around the
now would be
track.
one lap would be the.
I would assume now
But
that
you're saying
track-
you didn't do one lap, right? You came like a U
Uh,
when you were doing it.
no, I started and I ran 220 yards
Straight
to this
away.
point and kept right on going.
Okay.
And it came around the end, and then you had the straightaway right in front of the bleachers.
Yeah.
And they,
Yeah. So it's more of a U than
Yeah.
a circle. Yeah.
yeah, with a long leg over at the
Yeah.
start. So when they shortened it to 400 meters, I mean, physically that actually shortened. I don't know how the yards
Right.
come out, but they would have taken it off,
Right. at the
moved the
start.
starting
Yeah.
section up.
And
But-
Granddad was also in honor society when he was in high school. So
Weren't you in that?
We didn't do a whole lot with it though. I don't know if you did.
Yeah, I tasted that. I didn't.
you didn't join.
Mm-mm.
Did you get an invitation or you just didn't? do it?
Yeah, I mean, I would have. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know.
You didn't miss out on much.
I was in the Beta Club. Now, it's my belief that Beta means B,
Mm-hmm.
and because we were such a small school, we did not have an honor society. We had something called a Beta Club.
There were more people that could.
Well, we had to have a 98 average in order to get an invitation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty good.
But I think they felt that it was not as difficult to get an A in a small school as a city school like Grandad went to.
Gotcha.
I got a little story.
Uh-huh.
I was in the ninth grade, I believe. And a number of people that I knew were getting on the honor roll. And I was never told by my parents that, hey, you got to do better than this, blah, 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 you know.
Right.
And it was one day I'm sitting there and I'm in one of these student desks right next to another student. And it was in a biology type of arrangement with big countertops and water and sinks and all that. That was where our homeroom started. And this young fellow was from the children's home that was right across the street from the high school, or from Reynolds High. And there were quite a few students that were from the children's home. And this fella, I could look over at some of his paperwork, and not during testing. This was
Right.
just
Yeah.
looking over his, and handwriting was beautiful. And I thought, God, that looks good. That looks decent. They were one of the first things that began to click in my mind. That's ninth grade. And then so many people were making the honor roll, not so many, but a number of them. And I thought, maybe I could make the honor roll. So I stepped it up a notch,
Yeah.
and I did. And that was the first time that I ever had a feeling I got to do better than I'm doing. So my folks my mom, I suppose, had pushed me a little bit, but if she did, I don't remember it.
Yeah.
And my dad didn't take an interest in that,
Yep.
how I was doing in school and all. Not that I knew of.
Yeah. So, okay, so one of the questions I came up with, so I guess now still a little bit in the child, young person era. So what was the most trouble you got in? You remember?
Well, I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah, you
One
started.
came,
That's good.
one comes immediately to mind.
Okay, good. Makes it easy.
We had our place on East Polo Road, and across the road was a big wheat field, and the man never cut his wheat in the corner. He left us to have a baseball diamond there, and there was a friend of mine who was he had a younger sister, and he'd come over to my house once like in 6 months or something, and we got along pretty good together. So we go out back, and Dad had an acre of land there, and it was kind of fenced in the rear. And on the other side of the fence, back down the slope a ways, was some pigs.
Mm-hmm.
He had about 4 pigs, I think. And they were half grown. They were pretty good size, maybe a little bigger than that. They were pretty good size. So Chuck and I, for some reason, ended up down that way. So we got in the pen with them. We jump up, we would jump up on the house, and they weren't particularly chasing us. But they were scared. They're running around. So one of the neighbors sees this, and he calls up the owner of the pigs, and he comes down, and he you guys go somewhere else and play. Don't play around these pigs. They're dangerous.
Yeah.
So we didn't. Chuck and I that'd be the time that we'd get into something we shouldn't, and then of course, later that afternoon, Mr. Clark, our next door neighbor, walked over and was talking with my dad.
Yeah.
And my dad didn't get all mad and upset and all that,
Yeah.
but he said, "I don't think you ought to run around chasing his pigs." Anyway, that was the first big problem.
How old were you then?
Oh, wow. Oh, I'll say 12.
Chasing the pigs. That's funny.
Did you have one come to mind?
My biggest problem was my mouth.
Yeah.
I would sass Mother, and Mother didn't like that a whole lot. And there was a time she quartered me in the bedroom. And don't hit me. And she said, "Put your arms down." I said, "Are you going to hit me?" She said, "Put your arms down." I said, "If I put them down, you won't hit me." She said, "Put your arms down." I did, and she did. She didn't like it when I sassed her. And the punishment that I got as a little kid was to stand in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And if I really had disobeyed, it was to stand in the corner on one foot.
Oh.
And if I was really, really bad, I had to go get my own switch. And I'd get a little bitty one. And she would send me back for a bigger one.
This is too small. We had to stand in the corner.
I got one for you. I'm going to guess that when I was about 9, let's see, we moved down there when I was 8, so 9 or 10, something like that. See, my dad in the backyard, included in our purchase, was a 2-story chicken house.
Mm-hmm.
The base was a concrete base with side walls that came up about 2.5 feet, and they were wide. I don't know why they were that way. And then the structure was built on that, so there'd be no wood to rot. We had this chicken house, and we go out in the spring and we'd buy little chicks.
Mm-hmm.
And he fully supported this. And so I'm starting to raise little chicks, and I'm starting to learn, what you got to do to keep them alive. They needed to have a hood with a lamp in it because they need to be warm, need to be kept warm. They'd all huddle under that lamp, and then they'd start growing. And then they'd start, all of a sudden you'd see the wings starting to produce these spikes, and that turned into feathers.
Mm-hmm.
And we did this quite a few summers. And I got a cramp start in my leg. Oh, gosh.
Well, Charlie horse?
Yeah, well, a cramp in that muscle right there. Okay, went away. It was worried that I was going to put him to work again. It was a 2-story chicken house, and the chickens were all upstairs. And I would raise the chickens, and you would get hens and you would get roosters. So the rooster became dinner.
Yeah.
And I would chop that head off and take it in, and Mom would dunk it in the hot water and started pulling feathers. She always took care of it once it was ready to be done. And so I raised them for quite a few years. We got into some game birds. I had asked my neighbor, man, I got a chicken out there sitting in the nest, and it just hunches down and spreads its feathers all. He said, oh, that's a setting hen. She's ready to set eggs. So the word got out to another guy living out there who was a professional game bird raiser of game birds, and every year would take them into the fair. And he said, if you'll let me have that hen for maybe 6 weeks it was, he said, I'll give you a dozen eggs. And I said, that's fine with me. So I ended up getting into some chickens and ended up taking some game birds to the fair and won 2 place, I think it was second place entry. No first place, but second place. And but what I found out in the last year, just about the time I got my license, that was the end of the chickens. I found out that the feed that I paid for that entire year, no matter how many eggs they laid, it would be just enough to pay for the feed. So, I'm not making anything.
Yeah.
Which was, I guess, a pretty good lesson.
Yeah.
But so that was the end of the chickens. But it was a great experience. And my grandmother would be there, visiting 6 months a year, and she'd go out and I'd ask her questions about when she was on the farm. And
you got in trouble with the chickens?
No,
No, it's just
never gotten. I did have something go haywire that was not good. My dad bought me ducks once, and they were 2 ducks, and they played around mostly in the yard, and they'd get up in the apple tree and kind of roost in the apple tree. And you can't keep those things forever. And one I don't know who came up with the idea. Why don't we have duck for Thanksgiving? And I said, okay. It's not like it was something that I couldn't live without. So we whacked the head, and your mom, and she soaked it and got the feathers off and all. And the single one was still out there. And we figured we'd eat him at Christmas. I went to reach down and take a hold of that duck, and it was nothing but skin and bones.
Oh yeah.
It had lost its partner.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was a crime. I should have whacked them both, and when we used a freezer, which we didn't have, and kept the other one until Christmas. So that was the only.
And then there was the time you put the firecracker in the mailbox and it exploded your poor dad's mailbox.
I blew my.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That one.
Well,
Guess what he gave him for Christmas?
I gave him a new mailbox. I did.
That year?
That year,
Yeah.
I had tossed and it has the little rivets in the side, and between the rivets, it was bowed out all the way along. And then there was this lamp out front, and it had a glass lens, and the light would come on at night, electric light, it would light out so I'm back there, and I thought, there's no way that I could hit that. And I don't know, I couldn't have been my BB gun. I'm not sure if it was a BB gun or a slingshot, but I took one shot at it. I hit that glass. I told Dad about it, and he just kind of, nonchalant, has also bought a lens for a.
Yeah.
Your great-grandfather was the best storyteller.
Yeah.
He would just, you just sit and listen to him tell these stories, and he really had a gift for,
Your dad? Or Granddad's dad?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he was an artist in Philly. I would take an art school. I don't know how many years. I don't know if I mentioned this at the time. I brought it up before, but he won the prize, and the guy told him, "There's no money in art.
Yeah.
You might as well find another way to make a living," which he did. So
Do you remember moving from New Jersey to North Carolina?
Oh,
Was it
yeah.
New Jersey? Is that
New Jersey, yeah. Nutley, New Jersey.
Yeah. How was? Do you remember? I don't know what moving was like.
What?
What moving was like? Were you happy about it? Was it different?
I didn't know enough to maybe be apprehensive about the move, but I got down there, and I mean, we had a beautiful piece of property and a chicken house, and
Did you and Mom not go on the train?
oh, we came down on the train. Dad had come down and made the purchase and all that, and
Now, Mom lived in this house she'd never seen. She left New Jersey,
she loved New Jersey.
came to North Carolina. They had septic tanks, they had well water. It had to have been a tremendous,
Change.
oh yeah, for her.
Yeah, my mom's mom was an expert cook,
Okay.
and she worked in one of the rich houses, and she was the head chef. They had other people that,
In
Yeah.
Jersey?
yeah.
In Philadelphia.
Oh no, in Philadelphia, excuse me. When my mother was growing up.
Oh.
And that's where Grandma Matthews got to be such a good cook.
But I didn't particularly know to be concerned about moving south. I didn't know there was a Civil War till I got down in the South. And one day in class, when it was mentioned, half the class turned around and looked at me as if I did it.
You did it.
The only mistake I made in moving south, which another friend of mine didn't make, she learned to talk Southern accent, y'all, and a whole ball of wax. And you'd have sworn a year after she moved there, she had been born and raised there.
Yeah.
And I retained the way I said things, like a ball and so forth. I retained that right through high school. And I used to catch it. People would repeat it the way I'd said it,
Like it was funny or weird. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, it really wasn't a big deal.
Did I tell you when I tried to say y'all in Kentucky? They told me not to. I came in and said it, and everyone was like, I guess they were just like, no, that doesn't fit. Just don't say it.
Well, now, when we came to Ohio, everybody would mimic the way I talked.
Right. Yeah.
So, and you remember Mo, Thomas's wife? She would say that when Thomas and I were on the phone together, she said after 5 minutes she couldn't understand a word he was saying.
He'd fall back into his.
Well, we did just the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how Maddie is. My
I
friend
did-
Maddie, her family lives down there, and she'll start talking country. Like when she's on the phone with them, her voice will like get an accent.
The only thing they would ever do, even in high school, they would repeat the word as if, God, you got a terrible way of talking. But they
Yeah.
never said that.
Right.
And then when I went off to NC State, I immediately found out the first week I was there, it didn't matter whether you said y'all or ball,
Yeah.
baseball or ball,
Yeah.
Jersey style. Didn't matter what you said and how you said it, because we were integrated. Everything was.
Right. Is there a good amount of people from?
Well,
all
we
over
weren't
the country?
we weren't totally integrated relative to the black folk,
Right.
which was
Yeah.
not right. But
Yeah.
yeah, but we had Yankees and
Yeah.
football players and basketball players out of Indiana and Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
playing on the NC State team, and I was right on the floor with them. And
So back then, do you think it would have been only the football and the basketball team really were doing like recruiting for the sports? How do you think some of the track people you ran with got recruited, or it was just kind of you came to the school and then it was kind of a
oh, they
secondary-
were recruiting the football and basketball.
right. So you think it was probably just those two sports?
I think they recruited one track runner.
Okay.
He came out of maybe Kentucky. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It was somewhere, and he would have beat me if he'd have stayed at it.
Yeah.
But whatever happened, he was gone in about 3 or 4 months. A lot of people were like that. They didn't stay around.
Yeah.
My school only had basketball and baseball. There was no football, track, none of that. But there was girls basketball, and it was half court.
Yeah.
Was
Because you
when I-
couldn't run, you wouldn't be able to make it all the way down.
Evidently. Most
When I-
surprised I ever was I was playing center, and they threw me the ball, and I did a hook shot, and it went in.
You can never repeat it again.
Just look at it. Oh.
I shot a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the backyard that we had a goal set up, and I would shoot. Come home from school and I'd shoot. If I wasn't shooting basketball, I'd get my rifle and go. During squirrel season, I'd go hunting a little further back. Down there now, there's a highway runs along with Chick-fil-A and you know, all that stuff back there, and on the other side of where we lived.
Yeah.
But when I went to NC State, I felt it. I knew that nobody gave a hoot where anybody came from, how they talked. It was everybody was just an equal on the floor.
So how was the move then to Ohio from North Carolina? What was that kind of like?
Well, when we came here, number one, I did not know a soul.
Yeah.
And I knew I was pregnant.
Yeah.
We moved into an apartment, and Grandad immediately was sent out of town for a business trip. I slept with a butcher knife.
Oh yeah.
Oh my. That would be
I
scary.
didn't.
Yeah.
Because the grocery service station at the corner had been robbed.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Do you want water?
Please,
I kind of want water.
glasses are over here.
Everyone's coughing.
Sympathy.
That is funny. That'd be scary. Moving
It was
somewhere
very
not
scary.
knowing anyone.
I saw, thank you, dear. I saw two ladies pushing baby Bucky down the street,
Mm-hmm.
and I went out and stopped them and said, introduced myself and said, I'm pregnant and I need a doctor. Could you?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, we are part of the Air Force down at.
Rickenbacker?
Working back at
Rickenbacker.
Air Force Base, yeah.
She said, but I know another lady. So she got me the name. Turned out the lady I asked, her husband and Grandad had lived on the same dorm in Ohio State.
Never met.
At North Carolina State?
Yeah,
Oh wow. Yeah.
That's funny.
never met. And they had ROTC, and I was in the Air Force ROTC, but I didn't follow through. He did.
Mm-hmm.
He went on to get his lieutenant.
Needless to say, we became best friends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just from walking outside and stopping them? That's nice.
That's good you did that.
But it was it was hard for me moving.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. But
Was it a hard decision to move?
Didn't have
It
much
was-
choice.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not. We didn't have a choice.
Yeah. So it wasn't as much of a there's this job in Ohio if you want it, it's a you need to go to Ohio type of thing.
Well, no, down the way they did that down in Winston-Salem, there had been a number over time would be leaving. one of my dad's friends, assistant manager, his son had previously gone to Indianapolis, the Indiana plant,
Yeah.
and probably 4 years before we went. And but we hadn't worked there that long, and they were looking to release some personnel that we were working on defense activities in that building, not telephone equipment. And we're building, in my case, I was involved in the piece parts that were being made for a guidance system. They were all pretty small, intricate metal parts, you know. And but they were going to be easing off, getting away from Bell System. Got away completely. I think.
Where did you look besides Columbus?
Yeah, I put a. They said I can work, and I took a look at it, and I ran a 1 day drive,
Yeah.
maybe 12-hour day drive, but what 1 day drive. It was Reading, Pennsylvania. I could have interviewed, and also Atlanta. They had a plant.
We went to Charleston and looked at Charleston.
Well, I went up to Charleston, and I would have been switching.
West Virginia or South Carolina?
West Virginia. And I think he was in favor of hiring me. But, and that would have been totally new compared to anything, because it would have been installation of power lines, and whether you run it down this way or do you go over here and go down that way. And it'd been a whole new ball game, which might have been good, but.
Well, we decided one day to drive up to Charleston to see what it was like. And I think it was on a Saturday. And we're dumb. We don't know where to go, who to talk to. So we went to a bank and said, do you have apartments that you rent? And they ended up taking us to a place that when you walked up the stairwell, somebody had etched.
Well, I think use crayon or paint.
I think they had chiseled it in.
Yeah, something on the wall.
Women's figures. Out the window was the clothesline.
Yeah.
That, well, when we got back, Dad called the man and said, we're not interested in Columbus.
In West Virginia, Charleston.
And he told him, and the guy said, oh, he said, we have beautiful neighborhoods and we were going to take you and show you. And
We didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well,
we jumped the gun.
when I went and visited there for school, I didn't exactly fall in love with it either. So
we did not make a bad choice.
I don't think you did.
One of the interesting things about Charleston, well, we had several companies, but we chose Columbus as looking pretty good. And we looked at it as I don't know how many hour drive it would have been back in those days, 10, 12 hours. The roads looked exactly like what was shown on the PBS of the country music series, if you saw that. 2-lane roads. There was one 2-lane road I'll distinctly remember. We came across the river, and I made a right-hand turn, and as we're going along, we're looking down at the river. This wasn't a giant river. We're looking down at the river, but here's these shacks right along there. It was great living.
Yeah.
It's 2-lane road, and that 2-lane road had whined and whined, and that in the beginning, that I said a number of times that the only thing that wasn't a 2-lane road between Columbus, Ohio, and Winston-Salem, North Carolina, was the West Virginia Turnpike.
Yeah.
Now, it was mostly 2-lane, but wherever there was a hill, it was a known fact to be a tractor trailer on it. So they built a 3rd lane for the tractor trailers to kind of climb the hill. And that's the only time that you had a chance of getting around them. Oh, it's a terrible trip.
Yeah.
But thanks to Eisenhower wanting those big landing type strips out on the interstates, you know, something a big plane could land on. And he also started the GPS,
Mm-hmm.
which we all love. So I've heard.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was. We rode those roads many a time, and a lot of it at night.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of fun in a way. It became more fun as they put in the new highways.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I was gonna ask about what Dad was like as a kid.
Oh.
Is that a good one?
About what?
What was Steve like as a kid?
When Steve was born, he had auburn hair, and he had a lot of it. And he would just lay and look. And when I brought him home from the hospital, I would know he was awake, and he was more than happy to let me get ready to feed him. He was a very, very nice little baby.
Now Eric, he would wake up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and would scream. He wanted to eat.
Pretty much determined that Eric's problem was me. I was given skim milk rather than milk. And he was hungry, so I can't really blame him
Couldn't blame him for it.
crying.
I remember one time I was so upset with him. I walked over to that cage and I thought, ugh. And I said, no, I can't touch him. You know, other fathers don't make that decision at that moment, because there's a lot of fathers, I'm sure, have that same problem. They waked up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you know, he wouldn't stop crying. But
No.
thank goodness I didn't do anything that I shouldn't have done. I didn't come close to doing it.
Yeah.
It did cross my mind, but when I saw what I was thinking, I said, "Hey, you can't do that."
But your dad was an easy kid.
I enjoyed the, I've told you about this one. I enjoyed we went down to the middle school and they were gonna have singing. Singing, the choir, no, well, the whole class, we're gonna sing Christmas carols. And we come in and sit down. I think I noticed there was a drum set to the side of the group. But I would only have noticed, and I hadn't heard anything about it or anything. And so they sang a while, and I don't know how they introduced it, but all of a sudden Stephen stands up. He comes walking down, goes over there, sits down here. You can picture that.
Yeah.
Get everything just the way he wants it. And then he was ready, and they played Jingle Bell Rock. And he played whatever he played. And when he came over and sat down, I said, "Son, you just bought yourself a drum set."
You didn't know he could play.
Didn't know
Did
he
you?
was going to do that. He didn't tell us.
We didn't know it was going to happen.
Yeah.
It was a surprise for us. But that's what a place like Worthington did. They had the drum set
Yeah. Yeah.
and were able to. I would come home from work, and Steve, of course, got home before me. And I'd walk in the house and I'd hear him down there. You didn't ever have to ask him to practice.
Yeah.
He was listening to Neil Peart,
Yep. The Rush, right?
Yep.
Rush, and apparently he was developing a lot of his technique or whatever from that. Played right with him. I assume he played right with him because I couldn't hear what Neil was doing, but I thought, okay, sounds pretty good to me. Then we had a lot of good years by going to some of his shows. And
Too bad we didn't. Well, we went to that one with Wall.
I mean, we've been to a few.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
You don't remember the ones when we were younger?
We took you to one at the Iron Pony.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I remember that
You
one.
remember
I
that
remember
one?
Dad threw me his stick broke and he threw it to me. I remember that like
You were-
vividly.
You were just
Yeah, I
little.
don't know if I remember that. Remember we were like, chocolate milk?
I had bought a
Sorry.
video camera early, and he was going to play on stage with, what was the
Ted.
other?
Ted.
Ted and a couple others, whatever. They were going to play on stage at the
High school
Worthington High
Valentine.
School
Mm-hmm.
Wait, Ted?
auditorium.
We know?
Mhm.
He went to Worthington? Oh.
Yeah, they've
I
known
didn't
each
know
other a
how
long
long
time.
they'd like been friends.
Oh yeah,
So
since
they were
I,
friends before their band.
Mhm.
yeah,
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I knew Bob.
Did he meet Bob went to Worthington too?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Bob lived down the street. All of the young men that were in your mother and dad's wedding call me mom.
but he set up to play down there, and I didn't know what was going to happen. This was just as new to me as anything. It was like a talent show. It wasn't
It
a
was.
contest.
It's a talent show.
And I had bought a new video camera in order to do this. Cost a little bit of money in those days.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there running that camera, and I can see out of the corner of my eye there's a man sitting there, and I don't know if he had a young son next to him, or we were one row back up in the auditorium, up in the second floor, and I was just constant taping, and he says, God, I can't believe he can keep doing that. Words to that effect. And
Yeah.
he was surprised that Steve was able to play that long.
Yeah.
Do you still have those, you think?
But
I'm
that's,
sure we do.
Some of
The
them.
videos?
yeah,
They'd be on a
8mm.
Yeah.
They're still here.
That'd be cool.
Hadn't been seen in a long time. That camera got screwed up. If you ever know of a person who wants to have a good video camera, something happened, it got stuck. They'd be sitting too long. I understand you're supposed to turn them over and this way and that way every so often. Otherwise, something could happen. But then I took these little bitty screws out. Next thing I know, screws are gone.
Yeah, that's not going back together.
Because I couldn't take the thing apart even without the little screws there.
Yeah.
So I blew a good camera. And I bought another one, a smaller one that still presumably I could run some of that on the TV. But and that way you'd see Grandma Hobson, and
That'd be cool.
then Steve was down on this one show. One weekend we went down there. Oh, it was their anniversary or
Mother and Daddy's 50th. wedding.
50th wedding anniversary.
Eric was in the Navy and he was at sea, so he was not
Yeah.
there.
So here's Steve, and you know he gets along very well with the young folk. It doesn't matter whether he knows them or not, and he's kind of milling around there. And I'm doing a little video work, and I spot this girl over here, and she's, you know, you could tell that she's really watching Steve, but didn't want to make it show. And I got her on tape,
Yeah.
and she was a cute gal too.
Yeah.
How old were they then?
It would be high school, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because Eric was in the Navy.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just that your dad had long hair and she had never seen him before. And she was wondering who this long haired dude was at this anniversary party. But
That'd be cool to see those videos.
Do you remember meeting Mom for the first time? Kim?
Oh.
yeah, I kind of do.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Well, your dad was playing at the Algora, which is north of here. And Granddad and I went, did not tell him we were coming, and we would always sit in the back. We did not want to intrude on. And could tell that this group of women over there knew the band. I think your dad came over and talked to them. And I don't know how I knew it was Kim, but it was. anyway, when we got ready to leave, we got in the car, and as we're leaving, driving down the driveway, here is your mother carrying.
Oh
The
wait, I feel
girlfriend-
like she might have told.
I don't think I've heard this.
I think mom has said this before, or maybe you.
I don't know which of her friends it was.
Uh-huh.
And your mother had on high heel shoes, and it's gravel, and her feet are going into the
This
gravel.
is the first time?
Stone gravel, about,
Yeah.
about like that, lots of it.
And Kim is carrying her, and Dad stopped beside her, and he said, "Can we help you?" And she said, "No, I got it covered." And she went on, and
Did she know who you guys are?
oh yeah,
Oh.
She probably wasn't.
I got it. Running away.
so evidently they put this girl into the car, which they normally did when she'd had too much to drink,
I wonder who it was.
Yeah.
and went back inside and told Steve, "I just met your parents," as I'm carrying my drunk friend to the car.
That's not ideal.
Now, your mother always thought that we felt that she was not a good person because she was out
Mm-hmm.
with these drunk people. My thought of your mother was, what a wonderful person to be physically carrying your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was impressed that she could do that, that she would do that. But it took me years before your mother ever believed that I did not think bad of her because of that.
I'm sure already having Leslie too was different.
Oh yeah. I didn't think about that.
Well, I don't remember the first time I met Leslie. I know that she came to our house and she and I played marbles on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt bad that Leslie was not here and part of
Mm-hmm.
the group she left.
Right.
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as a result, I don't know Leslie that
Right.
well, and I feel bad about that. But
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, I feel bad about. What was the son's name?
Colin. Leslie's son.
Her first son?
Yeah. Colin.
Yeah, Colin.
Yeah, Colin.
Colin.
Yeah.
Colin.
Mhm.
By the way, I got some nice pictures of Colin up in Cedar Point, right?
Yeah.
Going around, you know.
When he's little. Yeah.
Yeah, when he's little. But the last time I was in your backyard, I think was the last time. If not, it was the one before.
it was Aaliyah's graduation.
Yeah.
Mm.
Colin was there, and I wanted to see which one was Colin, because the time before he was sitting over in the chair with something. I don't know what he was working on, a book or something. I didn't really get to see him. And the last time we were over at your place, somebody went by and said something. I'm not sure what it was. Probably Mr. Matthews or something. And I turned and looked, and I didn't recognize a soul that I just looked at.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of them.
Yeah.
He had grown up that much
Yeah.
that
Yeah, he's like.
Yeah. Well, he's gonna go in the Marines.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
When Leslie had him, she came back to your mother's, and I went over to visit her and Colin and took her a gift, and Mike was laying on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sitting in that brown chair,
Mm-hmm.
had Colin in my lap, and Leslie sitting on the floor, and he gave me the sweetest little smile.
Colin is cute little.
Cute little
Yeah, he
baby.
was.
Yeah. Like in our home videos, like
Uh-huh.
Nathan and I are like running around, and then Colin's like running around with us.
Yeah.
He's been my buddy ever since. But
When we were younger, we kind of like grew up with him. I mean, for a period
it's
of
kinda-
time.
Yeah, so close in age.
Hmm.
Let's see.
I guess he will graduate this.
This year.
Yeah.
now which one is it that went in the military?
Yeah. So yeah, Colin's. gonna
Colin
go-
went
he's-
in the military.
He's going to once he graduates high school. in the
Yeah,
spring.
but how about the one?
Oh,
for
Cody,
the-
my cousin.
maybe.
Yeah, my cousin Cody, our cousin Cody. He's a
Marine?
Marine too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's older than Nathan.
Yeah, he's old.
that who you're
Yeah,
talking
he's
about?
married. He got married this past summer.
Is that who you're thinking of?
No, I don't think so.
Or Ashton, like the Leslie step.
He's thinking of Colin.
Or
It's just
Cody.
I guess.
no,
Somebody.
Colin.
They call him.
Colin.
Colin had joined the Marines,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but he is not going to go in until he graduates from high school.
Yeah, so he's waiting on it. Yeah. But
Yeah.
then Blake's getting married. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Blake.
Oh, Blake,
Blake, the cousin. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Cody, my cousin, got married this year. Kayla got married this summer. And then Blake's going to get married next year. And so is Erin, our other cousin.
Yeah.
And then she's engaged. So I'm just,
You're gonna be.
I'm the holdout.
Yeah.
And I'm 22. I didn't think I'd be the holdout at 22. But
There was a time we had gone to Indiana and Amber and Dennis's, and you and the cousins and I were all in the backyard,
mm-hmm.
and we were having a good time. And we were yelling and screaming, and Amber heard us yelling and screaming. And she came running out because she thought somebody was really hurt bad. And but we were having fun.
You gotten hurt there. Remember, or were you there when I hit my nose?
at their house.
Yeah. Do you know how like Dennis calls everyone, has this nickname for everyone? Like every single one of the kids, he doesn't call us our name.
Oh, Knee-Noser.
Yeah, now he calls me Knee Noser because I don't know. I went there for like spring break or something, and we were on the trampoline, and I did a front flip, and so like my legs were coming around first, and they landed first and bounced back off, and I kept coming around and like kneed myself on my nose, and it was bad. Like I thought I broke my nose. It hurt. Like just getting hit in the nose hurts so bad. It was like my knee and it got all like bruised and was
Did
bleeding.
it bleed?
Yeah, it was like bleeding.
He calls her Knee-Noser.
Yeah, Knee Noser.
And then you ran into the RV with the golf cart. You would prefer we forgot about that.
I still blame Dad because we were going around their blueberry, just around the blueberry farm, and they park like if these are all the blueberries, and this is their house, they park the RV right here. So we were going like around and around. We were actually going this way. We were coming out, and I was gonna go straight and like go back to the house, and Dad was like, one more lap. And I remember I just like turned it and tried to like make the turn and just like went into the RV. I was like so frightened. I was like, Dad said, I kind of remember it, but Dad said, I was like, I want to go home. I want to go home. Like, I want to go back home. Oh God, yeah. I'd still say that probably.
Oh, I got a quick story for you. I first moved to North Carolina. I was used to being on a sled, a snow sled in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I had two sleds. My first one, which really, you couldn't steer it real well. And then my second one was American Flyer, I believe it was. And, it was bigger and steered a lot. Well, you were able to steer it a lot better. And I talked to Gordon, right? He's a kid that lived 2 houses down. I said, let's go sleigh riding Mr. Hoosier's cow pasture, because that's got a nice slope all the way down. He said, well, yeah, okay. He had never been in a sled before. So, of course, I kept my good one. He got the old one. And he was going to follow me on down. So down I go. Everything's going great, snow flying, and there's a creek at the bottom. Well, to avoid me getting wet, I turned that steering and that sled turned real good, and I paralleled the creek. And here comes Gordon in this old sled, and he turns it, and he didn't get it turned enough, and he went at about a 45 right at the creek, and it flipped over and dumped him in the water.
Oh God.
Oh,
Brr.
golly.
Wonder what kind of memories Gordon has.
Yeah, I don't think he tells the story quite the same way. Yeah.
You know, it's, yeah, Gordon and I were still all right. I've thought of that since, and I thought, boy, you couldn't, if you wanted to cause a problem, you wouldn't have been able to do a better job than you did. But that was kind of funny. I had just started to learn all those. I'm sure I had learned to ice skate when I was in Jersey. I had just learned.
What-
Mom and Dad took us over to the local pond in Yanakaw Park.
What is your first memory?
My first memory. Oh.
How far back can you go?
Well, I think the first one was sticking my finger in the outlet. Which makes sense that I remember that.
When? I didn't
When
know
I
you
was
did
little.
that. Where?
Like really little. That's why I remember it, because I was so...
Where'd you do it?
You got a shock?
Yeah. What? In the
Where-
family room.
Oh,
I think that's my first one.
I didn't
But
know that
like,
happened.
I remember going to the zoo really young. So I think that's probably like towards...
I have memories, but I don't know the order.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, I just figure, I think that's probably one of my youngest is sticking my finger in that. But...
Mine.
Do you remember going bear hunting in the backyard?
Yeah, I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
watching you.
Oh, yeah. In your backyard? Yeah.
And he would go under the tree and want me to follow him.
Yeah, that sounds
And he
about
was
right.
down here and the limbs were here.
I was like, come on, Grandad.
Do you remember doing the carousel in our backyard? We had our own carousel around the tree. We run what we said were hobby horses, but they weren't.
I don't know if I remember that.
Do you remember what you and I did
The
in the
snowballs?
backyard?
The snowballs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
Okay.
that.
Yep.
I remember that.
We'd go out to play ball. I'd make a snowball and throw. All laughing at the fact that once I had thrown a snowball at Eric or Stephen after having been throwing hardball. And I
Yeah.
threw a snowball and it.
Yeah.
So we made a game out of it out there.
You remember Dr. Schiller? Hour of Power on Sunday morning? Well, the church went belly up and they had to close it, and Reverend Schiller died. This week I was fiddling around with the search and keyed in Hour of Power, and Reverend Schiller's grandfather now has an Hour of Power service in a different church. But
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And like Cheez-Its when we'd eat. I don't know. I just remember Cheez-Its. That was like our snack.
I remember making popsicles.
Yeah.
Lemonade popsicles, pink lemonade popsicles.
Mm-hmm.
Ice cream, ice cream all the time. Chocolate ice cream.
there was a time that your mother and dad were someplace for like 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to come up with things to entertain you. So we decided we were going to give you jobs and you were going to make money. And then we were going to go to the store and spend your money. And your job was picking up walnuts. And you would get so much money for each little can of walnuts. And then we went to the dollar store. And you knew how much money you had. And you picked your things and you got to pay for it. And then there was tax.
Yeah.
You didn't like tax.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense.
Yeah, you did not like tax.
I remember that.
No, I was just thinking of something different to change the subject a little bit. But when my grandmother, after Granddad died, she couldn't keep up the apartment, so she would live with her 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
And she would spend 3 months with one daughter, 3 months with the other daughter. And the deal was that her Social Security money would go to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then she would come and spend 6 months with us, and she got to keep her Social Security money. Now she bought a set of glasses and some things for Mom and Dad, from that. But it was like, I was just picturing her and I walking in the backyard. I'm talking when I was 9 years old or thereabouts. And she was like having a sister, I guess, an older sister.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you were an only child. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that.
But I started a little bitty garden back there, and she and I walked around to Rosedale Circle and to a little garden place down there and bought a couple of little flowers and came back and planted them. And
That was your
my
grandma?
my grandma, my dad's mother. Yeah.
So, is there anything advice for being a parent that you think sticks out the most to you?
What was your
Advice for being a parent from parenting?
Parenthood is very, I'll say, stressful, and there is never a stop. It is constantly evolving. It's something I always wanted. It's something I would not have changed for anything.
Yeah, I feel like it's stressful till they're older and like good, like on their own.
Now with you two, I've heard people say, oh, your grandkids come and you spoil them and you send them home. That's not what we did with you.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's definitely not.
But it was not 24/7.
Yeah.
With kids, you just do the best you can.
Yeah, one of the hardest things that I found about being a father, in all honesty, this was true when we lived in, it was Columbus, but it was the Groveport community down there. At that age, I find myself taking Eric to some kind of meeting, and then you just sit there and don't do anything. Indian guides, for example. And the men just sit there not really doing anything. And somebody has set up a little game so the five or six little boys are doing something. I'd rather just have the boy to myself and go hiking around go hiking through High Banks Park, for instance.
Yeah.
You and I did that a lot.
Yeah, we did.
And one of the
That
first
was a walk from your house, right? We could get there just from your house.
No, we drove
Where?
north on.
Why do I think that?
No, we
Well,
would
but
walk
there-
from the house to the little creek behind the school or something.
Was there a playground in walking distance from your house? Okay, I was gonna say I remember walking down Longfellow, right?
Yeah,
And we would go.
past the school.
Oh, we went down to the park and we would walk
Yeah.
along the park a good bit.
Yeah.
And you would play on the gym, and I got upset years later when the old gym was ripped out and they put in a better one.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, you can't have a youngster to stand on it like Nathan did. You know?
Yeah.
I remember playing on that.
Yeah.
And we would walk over to the school and they had the United States on the pavement. And we would each stand in the state that Indiana and Ohio and Florida and
But you know, when you've got your own children, you're working an 8 to 5 job, and you come home and you type of thing, and you don't get to enjoy the children the way grandparents enjoy grandchildren. Because grandparents wake up at 8 or 9 in the morning if they sleep that long, and they got the whole day, and they might have the children for most of the day, and you have plenty of time to just go take a walk or go down to the park, walk along the river, go to the zoo, go up to Cleveland and see
The Browns. Yeah.
dinosaur bones.
and we never
that.
ever babysat the two of you. You
No.
came to visit
That's right.
We didn't babysit them. We had a visit with them,
and we played.
Yeah.
What's that one museum? It was like the
Historical Society.
No, we drove far. It was like
Oh.
space or something.
Yeah, in Dayton? Or Wapakoneta?
Neil Armstrong.
Yeah,
It's in Wapakoneta?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember that.
I got pictures of that.
Uh-huh. I remember the simulator in there. That was fun, and I crashed every time. But it was a fun crash.
We were getting ready to go in, and we had stopped and looked at the airplanes. And you turned around and said, "Grandma, I'm having fun, and we're not even inside yet."
That sounds like something I would say.
Do you remember the guns? We went to a reenactment.
I remember going
Yeah,
to that.
I feel like I kind of remember.
I liked that.
Was I scared?
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
and I went inside one of the buildings, and Nathan kept running, and I'm thinking Granddad's gonna lose him.
Nathan's running around.
But that
Where
was
was-
a neat day.
Where was
Yeah,
that
I
at?
remember
You
that.
Where do they have? Where was that?
What was it?
Reenactment?
The reenactment of a battle, and then we rode on the boat.
Oh, out east of here.
Yeah,
Oh, I don't know the town.
Yeah, I don't remember where that was.
Yeah, we were out in the street, and he told you to
Mm-hmm. Yeah, couple.
yeah, cup your ears. Don't.
Mhm.
He said,
don't cover them, cup them.
Mhm.
I can't remember where that was.
that poor man's probably dead and gone, but he just broke a little smile
Yeah,
thinking
yeah,
about the fact
he got
that
mentioned.
some people remembered what he wanted them to remember.
And then when I put the pictures of your great grandparents in your bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
somebody said to me, "That picture of great grandmother is going to scare Nathan to death."
With her glasses on.
It never did it?
No? No, I mean,
You went up to bed and you said, "Why does she have glasses on?" I said, "They're her sunglasses."
Mhm.
all right, cool.
Said, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I think having it, because I was younger, it just like,
Just part of the
yeah,
book.
just desensitized me to.
Mhm.
And I've still got one of your little pink dolls.
You do. Mhm.
And when we moved, I also brought some of the books that we had read when you were little.
Mhm. I remember we read a lot. I remember reading up in your room in that chair by the window. We reading that?
We either read or told stories or sang songs before you went to bed, before you went to sleep.
You know, there was another thing I learned about life. Those chickens I had,
Mm-hmm.
they'd start laying eggs, and I had people I took the eggs to and sold. Well, when I was new at that thing, I'd think, boy, about $1.79 a dozen. You know, that's pretty good. And we got nearer to when my pullets started laying eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And so did all the other chickens
Yeah.
started laying eggs.
Right. and
Now
then-
they were down to, well, I don't know what, 59 cents or something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Supply and demand. Yeah.
Yep. I figured it out real quick.
Were there, I don't know, do you remember any like major technology changes or like major events that stuck out to you? Did you have a television in your house? Did you
Which house?
did you get it while you were growing up, or did they already have it?
No. I was probably 13 or 14 when we got one. It had rabbit ears,
Mm-hmm.
3 channels maybe.
Yeah.
I was 21 when I got my driver's license. Mother was 41,
Wow.
and we got them within a week of each other.
Yeah.
Daddy bought us a car to share. And we were going to get Grandma Davis to bring her back to Mother's. And Mother and I were arguing who was going to drive over there and who was going to drive back. And I said, well, I want to drive over there and you drive back. And she said, no, she wanted to. And she said, why do you want to do it that way? And I said, because if I have a wreck and kill people, it'll be 2 people going. And back it would be 3. She was thinking the same thing.
That's funny.
And it was an old stick shift car that tended the gears would get caught. And I was going to Winston for a job interview, dressed in high heel shoes, nylons, a pink sweater set, and a pink matching skirt. And since I'd never driven in town, my friend Donna was going to drive my car. She got the gears stuck under a traffic light. She didn't know what to do, so I hopped out and raised the hood, and this guy behind us has stopped, and he's walking up he thought it was so funny. And he said, can I help you? And I said, no, I've got it fixed. And I slammed the hood and said to Donna, move over, I'm driving. Because I could do better than she could.
Have you ever driven a stick shift?
Nope.
Me neither.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know if I'm sorry about it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a story from probably another time. Anyway,
So have we answered some of your questions?
Definitely. Yeah.
I feel like that was
I'll
pretty much all
tell
of
you
them.
one quickie.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in New Jersey, and the neighbor kids had bicycles, and I was on my bicycle. I don't remember getting it, but I was with the gang, and we were riding. There was a creek that ran along the foot of the hill that we lived on. Not a big hill, but pretty good size. Great sleigh riding hill. And I remember they were following a trail, and they started up on the other side, and it was a pretty steep climb. Now, I'm a pretty young kid at this point, and I remember pressing down with my legs, and I'm saying to myself, "Oh, you got this made. You got the power to do it." Of course, I didn't know the word power, but you got what it takes to do this. And I'd take that bike and go all the way up till we got above the bank, and on level ground again. That's just a little segment that I remember from way back, bicycle riding.
Did you say you remember in New Jersey something during World War II? Do you remember something about oil on the beach?
Oh, yeah, this was when I'm going to guess, I say more like 5 years old.
Yeah.
And see, I was born in 1937, so I put it about right.
Yeah, right in the middle.
And Mom's walking me along the beach, and she pointed out what was oil, this black stuff all on her. And she said, that's from the U-boats that are,
Sinking ships.
knocking out our ships, yeah. Yeah, I remember that. That's probably one of the earliest memories I have. Plain as day, though.
Yeah.
Daddy are you drafted when you have to come and be examined? No, that's not being drafted. Anyway, Daddy had to go be examined for the Army. And
No, he was going to join it, I believe.
well, he had to go be examined.
Yeah, you go be examined. That's
And
the
he
first
taught
step.
Mother how to drive the car before he left. And off he went. And I stepped on a broken bottle at the tobacco barn and split my foot. And Mother had dressed it and put a little cloth on it. And I remember him coming home and me waking up and showing him my foot. and he could not go into the Army because he had a heart murmur. But that was one of my first memories.
Hmm.
You know, I find it very interesting. I got plenty of time to watch shows that the normal person doesn't have the ability to take time to do. And there's a lot of reports, new ones coming out all the time, remakes of situations during World War II. And there was a lot to say about the submarine warfare.
Yeah.
And they were sitting out there with a periscope up, looking right in to the New York City. And boy, that was a close one.
On this ancestry program, I had found a place where my grandfather had filled out when he went in to be examined, and he had written out that he was a Quaker and he was a conscientious objector. So he did not serve in the war.
Would that, for your grandfather, would that have been World War One? Yeah.
And I also found it for my other grandfather, and found a place where he had filed for when you get money after you've served. What's
Pension?
I don't know what it's
Yeah.
called, but that's
Yes.
what he was applying for. I did not know that he had ever been in the war, and none of my cousins that I've talked to since knew about it. But
So that'd been your dad's dad?
It's been
and when Daddy needed to go be examined for the war, Grandma and Uncle Claude wanted him to sign up as a conscientious objector, and he said no. He said, I cannot stay here and let my friends go fight. And as a result of his heart, he didn't have to go anyway, but they were not happy with him. Did I tell you that there are pictures online of my house on Longfellow and how they have redone the inside? Hard to believe they did that to my house.
I guess they did buy it. Did they remodel? Did they change any, like, the structure? Like, did they change any walls or anything?
No, but everything that was wood, they painted. Anything that was brass, they took out and replaced with silver fixtures.
Oh, okay.
In that dining room that I spent $750 to paint, they painted over it.
I thought of one time our home in Worthington of painting the baseboards, and I looked at
Wait,
it.
they
The
didn't
wood
paint
was
the-
so pretty. I
They
thought
didn't paint the
Yeah.
floors, right? No,
Not the
okay.
floor.
Okay. I was about to say that would be a shame.
Wait, I thought, what did they do? Didn't you say the floor was gray or something?
They painted the dining room gray.
Mm.
And the wood that was above the fireplace in the family room, they painted it white, I believe. But
Oh,
Did you forget about it?
is part of that wall brick, or is that just the fireplace?
the
whole bottom.
The whole bottom's
bottom wall
brick.
was brick.
So it's brick with white wood.
I do actually in here. I look at this, and I think I like them painted. But when you, for instance, the riser on our stair steps in over in Longfellow, you walk in the front door and you see the risers, and the wood had such beautiful grain. And I looked at that and I said, geez, I would never want to cover that up. But I bet that's what happened. Wouldn't surprise me.
So if you ever want to look, just key in 215 Longfellow, Worthington. And you can go through the house.
Yeah, the new.
The neighborhood I live in, Lexington, is old.
Yeah.
It's real old. Yeah. I mean, I think most of those houses would have been mid 1800s, and some of them probably before.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Now you're in an apartment building. How
Yeah.
many apartments in your?
There are 4, 8, 12, 16. So there's 16 units. So there's this like probably like built in the 60s, I think. Like so those 16 units are in like the back, but then the road's here, and then there's the old house on the road, and then they built like 16 units behind the house. So the house in front, that's got to be really old.
And people live in that?
I don't know. It doesn't necessarily look like people live in it, but a lot of
Ghosts.
and it's expensive too, because I'm 1 block away from downtown, like the main downtown strip where the basketball arena is, and then all the bars and restaurants and everything.
So you walk to everything?
Oh yeah, I'm in a really nice location. Yeah.
How did you find it?
I don't know. It's super small. Like
It's a studio.
my apartment, like the whole room is like.
Go this way.
I was just gonna say from like, with including the kitchen, it's like here over. Maybe not even that big.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's literally. I've got. Okay, so this is the square. I've got my bed. I've got the recliner that I got from you guys, so it's here, and then the TV on the stand, and then over here is the kitchen, and then the 2 closets, and then a little tiny hallway like 3 feet, and then the bathroom. So I mean, I literally have a bed, recliner, the TV, the kitchen, and the bathroom. So there's no space to spare at all.
When
And then the dresser is down here.
When Mom and Dad were helping move you in, Dad sent me a video, and he was like going around Nathan's room. He was like, "Here we have the bedroom, and when you walk down the hall right here, you have the family room."
Yeah.
And he was just like,
So
would
it's
go
like,
a
it's
foot
like
over.
here's the bedroom, here's the family room, here's the kitchen.
All in the same room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't have a sofa?
Nope. No, there's no room for that.
Well, the little leather cubes I gave you.
Yeah. No, I use those for. Yeah, those are nice because people can sit on them if I have company.
Here's your seat.
Yeah.
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 I always thought that was nice to have extra seating.
Yeah, and I can put stuff in them. Yeah, they're nice to have.
Well, I like yours better than I like mine because yours roll, these don't.
Yeah. But I think I'm gonna probably try and live somewhere else next year because I don't like living by myself too much. If I can find someone I could stand, then I'll probably want to live with somebody.
Now,
You know
your
what?
neighbors, are they singles or?
Yep, everything is a studio, so it's just a.
In college, we had, one room,
Yep.
but we had bunk beds.
Yep, I had bunk beds my first 2
Yeah.
years.
And I found that to work out just fine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there was the day we were gathered in the room, and some fella had come in and he said, "Oh, you guys are on the track team." Yeah, we got to talking. He said, "Boy," he said, I guess he had done some track, so he backed up. And he was going to do the long jump, I guess is what. Going to do a long jump. And he was going to go, we opened the door and he was going to go through there. And he took off and he jumped, but his head got the top of the door up here. Oh, bam!
Oh.
And we just picked him up, brought him in, laid him on the bed. I don't know what we did with him after that.
Did you just leave him or?
No.
I think he woke up.
I don't remember, if we suggested he go to the doctor or something, but it didn't knock him out, but he was hurt.
Oh.
Yeah.
I cracked him a good one.
Yikes.
That was just in the dorm room, but it wasn't very big.
I remember Adam and I, when we first got to Wittenberg freshman year, we set up our room a certain way, and it was bad. I don't know why we did. It was dumb. So basically, after being at school for probably like 2 or 3 weeks, we'd gone into other people's dorms. We got to see how they'd all set it up. And we came to the conclusion that the way we set ours up was not very efficient. So we were laying in bed at like 1 or 1:30 in the morning. And I was like, what if we did it like this? And he's like, yeah, that'd be pretty good. And then I was like, you want to do it right now? And he's like, yeah, why not? So all of our neighbors had, because we're going, like the desks, like across the floor. They hadn't been like, what the hell are they doing over there?
2 in the morning.
Yeah, 2 in the morning, we're reorganizing all the furniture. Although I owed my neighbors. I tell you about, because I lived with all the football players in my hallway. I was the only person who wasn't a football player that lived in my, because my roommate was a football player. So I was in that hallway, and they all would wake up at 5:30 in the morning to go lift weights every day. And they just assumed that because everybody else was a football player, that everyone in that hallway
Was up.
Right. So they would be, good morning, Firestein, in the hallway, and they'd be banging on each other's. So every day at 5:30 in the morning, I was awake every single day until they all left, and then I would go back to sleep. It was horrible.
Which
Hey,
bathroom?
I'm doing good now. I'll be up at
Okay.
3 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and I do what I want to do. If I'm
Yeah.
want to
Do you
watch,
want to watch? Yeah.
I might pick up a ball game that I
Mhm.
would love to, replay one of the ball
Right.
games, whatever. And then I sit in here, and after a little breakfast, Pat will tell you, I just sit in here. I sit sitting up in that chair there. It's just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is more perfect for real sleep, but I mean, take good doze, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I come sneak over into the couch and sleep some more.
Yeah.
But I gotta, you can't do that if you work an 8-hour job or
Right.
have classes to attend. But
I get a good amount of sleep. I will say that, because my first class I taught wasn't till 11, so I didn't have to be in before that. But next semester, because they'll practice at 7 a.m., so I'll be up for that.
Now, if you get out of school, you have a teaching certificate?
Not exactly. So, at most colleges, you can, to be a full-time professor, you have to have a doctorate. So